Today's morning meeting speaker is Chief Justice Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court, Richard A. Robinson. Justice Robinson is the first African American Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Connecticut in 1979 and a Juris Doctor degree from Western Virginia University of Law in 1984. He was admitted to the West Virginia Bar and the Connecticut Bar and is a member of the U.S. District Court, Northern District of West Virginia, and the U.S. District Court, Connecticut. Please join me in warmly welcoming Chief Justice Richard Robinson.
Good morning, everyone. I've already been introduced. My name is Richard Robinson. I am the first African American Chief Justice of the state of Connecticut, and it's not because I was the first one qualified to be the first Chief Justice of the state of Connecticut. It was the first one who was given the opportunity to be the first Black Chief Justice of the state of Connecticut. Now, the thing I want to talk to you about is this is actually one of the presentations that I do with not only my judges, but judges across the entire country. I've done it in red states, blue states, progressive states, conservative states, and I've gotten a really good feedback from all of them. What I want to talk to you about is implicit bias. And I want to talk to you about that is because implicit bias can affect you in your lives, and it can really affect you when you're dealing with the court system. So, a surprise for you today. How many of you had smartphones with you? Okay, take out your smartphones. You're going to need them. I have polling software in here. So see that? It's like the little menu in a restaurant. If you take your phone and you focus on that, that'll take you directly to that website. Or you can join me, actually just do it this way for now. You can join me at slido.com is another way of doing this. So here's your first one. What is the most important thing that a judge should be? If you're at that Slido site, you can put one word in at a time, but type that word in and send it, and this will create what's called a word cloud. So 33 of you are typing. This is working. This is good. Fair, honest, judgy. That's a good one. By the way, Brody, I need you to keep me honest on the time because they say the most dangerous place in America is between a judge and a microphone. Sober? Okay, you can keep voting as I'm talking. But you see the biggest word there? Fair. A judge should be fair. What happens to our entire justice system? What happens to our democracy when judges are not fair? Now I can tell you something, and it's based on data. There's some disturbing data out there. Despite the fact that I know the judges that I work with want to be fair, the judges that I work with do not want to be racist. The judges that I work with want to give justice equally to everyone. The data indicates there's some problems. Let me give you two examples of that. In the federal court system, if you take similarly situated individuals, same criminal record, same crime, same everything, a young black male will receive a sentence that's 20% longer than a young white male who did the same crime, same criminology, same everything. Why is that? If I'm right about judges want to be fair and judges aren't racist, why does that happen? So I'm going to ask you another little test here. There's two people there. Read those columns. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Ready? Which person do you like the most? The one who was on the right or the one who was on the left? Okay, because I'm short on time, I'm going to speed through some of this, and this is part I'm going to speed through. But 61% of you like the one on the right, which is interesting, because most audiences do it the other way around. But there's no difference between these two people. What I've done here is I've reordered the words. The one on the left, I've shown you the good words first. She's intelligent, industrious, impulsive, critical, stubborn, envious. The sort of negative words are at the bottom. The other one, they're inverted. You have the bad at first, and then the good ones. There's this bias that we have, first in, first, last out bias, that the first information we receive, we tend to trust the most. Now here's another test for you. There's only a couple of these, but here's another one. I want you to tell me how many triangles you see. How many triangles do you see? Don't tell your neighbor, just type it in. Sorry, that would have helped. So type in right now how many triangles you see. The polling should have changed on your phones. Okay, my polling software does not seem to be working on this one. So I'm going to ask you verbally. Tell me now. Anybody, shout it out. How many triangles do you see? Okay, I'm hearing 0, I'm hearing 14, I'm hearing 13, I'm hearing 6. The people who said 0 are right. There is not a single triangle in that picture. What is a triangle? Three-sided figure. You see any three-sided figures there? There's not a single one there. Your mind is making that third side. Your mind took a shortcut. And we're going to talk about that shortcut that your mind took. We as human beings love patterns. We love to complete patterns. We love shortcuts. So there's something called implicit associations. And we're going to do one more test here, and it's called the Stroop test. I need everybody, we're going to do this one verbally. I need everybody to help me with this one. And what the Stroop test is, measures interference in your thinking process. So what we're going to do here is, I want you to tell me, and you got to do it as fast as you can, the colors that you see, not the letters that you see. We're going to start on the top left and work our way to the right, the next row down, the next row down, the next row down. Everybody promise me you can do that? As fast as you can? Okay, let's start out now. Go. Awesome. Awesome. You actually did that better than any other audience I've ever seen before. Thank you so much. We're not done yet. So I want you to do the same thing with this next group of letters. What I want is not the word, I want the color that you see. Okay? Ready? Go. Excellent, excellent. Now, Reverend, I should have talked to you about this before I said this, but if you get this next one right, I think we're going to let you go home for the rest of the day. If you get it right. Okay? Ready? Ready? Come on, let's go. Fast as you can now. Give me the color, not the word. All right? Go. Now, a lot of you were shouting the word instead of the color. So why did you do that? Those of you who did that, why did you do that? You've associated the word red with the color red. You've associated the word green with the color green. I broke that association on you. So even though I told you, tell me the color, not the word, you gave me the word. Now, why do we do that? It's really interesting. The world's an extremely complicated place. Your brain processes about 400 billion bits of information. You're aware of about 2,000 bytes. So out of 50 gigs of information, about the hard drive of a smartphone, you're conscious of about 250 bytes, which is about 3 text messages. So in order to get through all that information, you look for shortcuts. And these shortcuts, they're not good, they're not bad, they're just shortcuts. And they work most of the time for you. The problem becomes when the shortcut doesn't work well. Now, I grew up partially on my grandfather's farm in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and my great-grandmother's farm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And there were snakes down there. There were king snakes and coral snakes. They loved the king snakes because the king snakes would eat rats and mice and vole and all kind of creatures that would damage the farm. The coral snake would do the same, but the coral snake was venomous, deadly venomous. Now, the problem is on the farm, you had to know which snake was which snake. So if you were sitting on a rock, the coral snake is the deadly one. And there's a saying, red near yellow, you're a deadly fellow, red near black, you're okay, Jack. So imagine you're sitting on this rock, and a snake comes from under the rock, and you're trying to figure out which snake is that. And you're going red near green, purple near yellow, and snake's biting you, and you're going, is that the good one or the bad one? You're getting sleepy, and you go, yeah, okay, I think I know now. That doesn't do you much good. So you jump away. If you do what I do, you go, snake, and that's it. I'm in the car. So, oops, did I lose my connection? That's not good. Nope.
Can we move it?
So as I was saying before, you just jump away, snake, that's it. Here's the problem. You do that with everything that you run into in your life. And here's the thing, all your life you've been learning things. You've been learning about people. And you've been learning things about people who look, for example, like me, or you look at people who are identified as female, and you make certain assumptions about that person. The thing is, unconsciously, you're still making those assumptions even though you consciously can reject them. You might perceive a person like me to be more violent because you've heard that blacks are more violent, or you might have heard that blacks commit more crime, which quite frankly is not true. Most crimes involve the use of drugs, or the purchase of drugs, or the selling of drugs. Every statistic out there shows that the number of black people versus the number of white people who use drugs is about the same. If that's true, if it's proportionately the same, then the representation in prison should reflect that, and it doesn't. So there's something else going on. And one of the answers to that could be this, our biases. Have you ever been somewhere and you suddenly liked a person, or you tend to like the person? Have you ever sort of instantly disliked a person? Have you ever traveled outside the country for a while? My family is a family of martial artists. I have a 4th-degree black belt. My son has a 4th-degree black belt. My wife is our instructor. She has a 6th-degree black belt. And people often ask me, have I ever competed against my wife? I won't give you the answer to that, But I will tell you that winning isn't everything. Actually, she says to me, I've taught you everything you know, but not everything that I know. So what is implicit bias? Implicit bias are attitudes or stereotypes. They affect our understandings, our actions, our decisions. They're unconscious, they're involuntary. They can be favorable or unfavorable assessments, and they reside deep in our subconscious. So imagine if a judge is sitting on the bench and a jury is sitting in the jury box, and their biases are working. Is the defendant in that case getting a fair trial? Okay, in civil cases, let's say one participant was a woman and one was a man, and the person has biases against women or men, is that a fair trial? So we need to remove those biases in order for our systems to be fair. And when it comes to things like race and gender, that touches all of us. Now, I was trying a case in New Britain, Connecticut, not that far from here once, and we were doing what's called a pretrial. And so I'm sitting down talking to the attorneys about how long it's going to take, we're organizing things, how to pick the jury, and the plaintiff's attorney says, I'm going to have a great day in court. And so I said, why? He said, I've got a good plaintiff. And I'm thinking, your case is really bad. There's no way you're going to win this one. And I said, well, why do you think you're going to win? And he says, I'm an attractive plaintiff. And I go, I've met your client and doesn't seem to be an attractive plaintiff to me. What I meant was, would she be good on the witness stand? What he meant, she was physically attractive. So I was actually insulted. I said, my jurors are smarter than that. And then I started thinking about it. I started looking up the data. It shows that attractive people do better in court than unattractive people. It shouldn't be that way. Explicit bias. These are the biases we know about and we really hate. These are the ones that are external. It's racism, it's sexism, those kinds of things. The prejudicial attitudes and stereotypes that affect our understandings, our actions, our decisions. They are conscious. Negative behavior often hidden. Now here's the thing. Bias studies show that people are not as neutral as we thought they were. Implicit association tests appear to indicate that everyone has an implicit bias. If you ever have some downtime, you want something to do, go to that website there. It's implicit Harvard EDU. There's all kinds of implicit bias tests. There's short, tall, Republican, Democrat, male, female, you name it and they have it. And how it works is you're on your computer and you have to hit buttons, just 2 of them. And you have to respond as quickly as you can. And what it shows is that there's some interference if you have a bias with one of those selections. And you can't trick it because there's enough data there that they can remove your attempts to trick it. So if you get into the mindset that bias is unidirectional, that it's the majority versus the minority, that won't help you because we all have our implicit biases. Every single person. If you're a human being, you have a bias. So how do you get past those biases? I think I talk loud enough I can actually walk away from the microphone a few times. Think of it as an iceberg. Now, when you saw me, you knew nothing about me for the first time except I was a really good-looking guy. That's all you knew about me. Why do they laugh when I say that? But there's a lot more to me than my physical appearance. You can probably tell my age. I have a white beard, so I'm older. I don't have hair. I dress in a suit. You know that I'm a judge. You know that my family does karate because I told you that. But you didn't know that part. You didn't know I was a judge until somebody told you or you see me wearing robes. But you start making assessments of me as soon as you see me. And those are either positive or negative assessments. That is the rest of the iceberg. There's a lot to that. So what's in that iceberg? Those things you see on top, they can be ethnicity, physical appearance, things like that. You can tell whether I'm able or disabled, those kinds of things. You can tell a little bit about my social status. I'm dressed pretty nicely, my work style, my nationality, but start getting below that. Things you need to know about me to really identify with me. Things to know whether I'm going to be a good friend, a good coworker, a good professor. Those are a bit lower. You know, things like political preference, religion, education, thought process. These are things you have to talk with a person, interact with that person to feel those out. The problem is, as I said earlier, we start making those assumptions as soon as we see each other. Now, there's something out there called microaggressions, and I try not to use that word because people get very upset over that. Microaggressions can be things that you intended to be good. One of the microaggressions I get a lot of is, "You speak so well." Now, why is it a microaggression? What did you expect me to sound like? Yes, I have a doctorate degree. I'm a Chief Justice. But if you're expecting me to speak in Ebonics or slang, what am I going to react to when you do that? It's like when you ask a person, "Where are you from?" because to you they look like they're not American, whatever that means, because we look all different kinds of ways. But we make these assumptions really quickly. So it's a subtle, often unintended slight that are perceived by individuals when someone is referring to that person's color, race, or ethnicity. And let me give you an example of one, and it involves my cousin Jimmy, your uncle. Jimmy was a diver, and he went to West Hill High School in Dover, the school. He went to college at Colgate. I don't know if you've ever heard this story. And Jim is an incredible diver. He's an incredible athlete. He's actually a little bit shorter than me, can dunk a basketball like you wouldn't believe. He's a tennis player, he does everything well. So he arrives at the school, full ride scholarship as a diver. Now there's this stereotype that blacks can't swim. So Jim walks in there, the dive team sees him, and they say, "Can we help you?" And he goes, "I'm the new diver on the team." And I guess it was the captain, looked and said, "Oh, I didn't know black people can swim." And Jim's response was, "I can't. You have to come and get me every single time." Which I thought was a good way of dealing with that. But that's this microaggression or a microiniquity. Some other kind of microiniquities that we see are like this. So this is Kristen Presner. Kristen Presner designed this really simple test to see whether something was a microaggression. Things in our everyday life. Chairwoman, a noun, a gender-neutral term referring to both women and men. Is it? No. But we think that way about chairman. Scientist. Male scientist. Why is it that we say woman scientist, woman doctor, but we just say with a male doctor? This is a nurse. Doesn't like being called a male nurse. So those little things that we can do can remove the microaggressions. And how do you do that? Well, either we can not do anything about it, we can let fear rule and run away from it, or we can do something else. We can try to get to understanding. And how you get to understanding is you can practice the pause. And by practicing the pause, it's really, really simple. Before you walk up to an Asian person and say, "Do you speak Mandarin?" just stop. Stop. Don't assume the person is not from the United States. Don't assume the person speaks Mandarin. You wouldn't assume that an Irish person speaks Gaelic or Irish, right? Realize that we're all human beings subject to conscious and unconscious bias. Awareness is your first step to making you engage from keeping you engaging in micro insults. Let implicit bias influence your conduct. Beware to making mental shortcuts when assessing individuals. Make sure to use people assessments. See them as the entire iceberg, not as just that little tip. This is something that I was told not to do when I was growing up, and maybe you were too. I was told to ignore color, ignore gender, see people, I don't see color kind of a thing. That's wrong, because when you see me, you see my color. And how you're reacting to that, if you don't pause and start thinking, what is this doing to me? Am I feeling a little nervous because I'm near this person? Am I feeling less nervous because I'm near this person? You won't know that if you're running that line of I don't see color. And the truth is we do see color. There was a comedian who did this routine where a friend of his said, "I don't see color." And he says, "Well, as a black man, I understand that." And the guy says, "You're not black." He says, "Ah, you liar." So it was the kind of a thing where we do see the color. Be careful of engaging in gastronomic jurisprudence. And by gastronomic jurisprudence, I mean your gut. People say, "My gut tells me X, Y, and Z." I had a contracts professor who would always talk about gastronomic jurisprudence, and he said, avoid it. Get the facts. And he was absolutely right. Consider gut reactions to be potential indicators of implicit bias. Be diligent, don't allow your implicit bias to influence your decision-making process. Actively confront stereotypes. Practice, practice, and then practice. The fact that you know about implicit bias, you know that you can be biased, isn't enough. I've had judges come to me and say, Rick, I've taken your course, I've taken other courses, and I still have bias. And it's like, yes, that's what the course taught you. You will always have bias. But if you pause just for that second, one thing you can do is avoid a lot of embarrassment by doing that. Don't assume that a tall person plays basketball, for example. Challenge yourself, build new habits, get uncomfortable. Hang around people who are not like you. If we were to start a different program and I put half students over here and another school over here, you probably would stay in those individual rows. I'm saying don't do that. Mix together. Create safe space. By that I mean allow people to make mistakes. One thing I don't like about cancel culture is it sort of assumes that we all should be perfect. And we all can't be perfect. So don't cancel someone out because they made a mistake. There's mistakes, small mistakes, there's huge mistakes. But if you cancel that person out, how can you ever learn? How are you ever going to take a chance? You're always going to be afraid that you're going to say something wrong. Be mindful that you can say something wrong. But remember, we're human beings. Put together an action plan for yourself. Share stories and experiences, like the experience I told you about my cousin Jim. That's what I have for the time, so I'm a little bit early, I think. Oh, wrong.
No, you're
Good.
not early because they like to get their coffee or tea and that sort of thing. But if you have time, if your class can come, if you can come, we will be in Q&A, in the faculty Q&A. And I want to thank Chief Justice
Robinson.
for being here.